Thank you all for coming out this afternoon. I'm Chief Barry Roundtree. We are here today to provide information concerning the traffic stop that occurred on October the 18th, 2013 at approximately 12:24 a.m. involving Mr. James Edward Platter. Thank you for your patience in dealing with us with this situation. It's been very complex, but bear in mind we do have a duty to conduct a thorough investigation and provide accurate information to the public. This traffic stop resulted in an officer-involved shooting involving Officers Ferguson and Ayers. Both officers remain on administrative duty, as is normal protocol. Although it was reported that the officers had been suspended, that information has never been released from the police department that the officers were suspended. And again, the officers remain on administrative duty. We will only be answering questions related to the traffic stop. As you are aware, this is still an active investigation involving the Winston-Salem Police Department and the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigations. Any questions related to the prosecution of this case would need to be directed to the Forsyth County DA's office, and any questions related to the SBI's investigation and their evaluation of the officer's use of force would need to be directed to their office. At this time, I'll have Assistant Chief Connie Southern. She's assigned to our Criminal Investigations Division. She will come forward and provide the rest of the information during this press conference. Chief Southern.
Thank you, Chief. Good afternoon, and again, thank you for coming out. And I would also like to reiterate the comments from Chief Roundtree that we thank you very much for your patience and understanding, as I know I personally talked with many of you as we have worked our way through this investigation. Officers Ferguson and Ayers have both been interviewed by the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, as well as the Winston-Salem Police Department's Criminal Investigation Division. Agents with the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation executed a search warrant for the 1992 Cadillac Seville, which was being driven by Mr. Platter during the date of the incident. As a result of that search, an open container of alcohol was located. However, no drugs or weapons were located inside the vehicle. Investigation by the Winston-Salem Police Department's Criminal Investigation Division has determined the initial reason for Officer Ferguson's attempt to stop the vehicle to be North Carolina Chapter 20 motor vehicle violations, which included an expired registration and expired North Carolina state inspection. Mr. Platter sped away following an initial attempt to stop the vehicle and was eventually stopped by Officer Ferguson at the intersection of East 16th Street and North Liberty Street. Officer Ferguson approached Mr. Platter and his vehicle with his weapon drawn while giving verbal commands to the driver. Mr. Platter's vehicle struck Mr. Platter ignored those commands and accelerated his vehicle towards Officer Ferguson. Mr. Platter's vehicle struck Officer Ferguson on the left knee and then struck the left rear bumper of Officer Ferguson's patrol vehicle as it sped away. It was during this encounter that Officer Ferguson fired on Mr. Platter's vehicle. Mr. Platter drove his vehicle through the parking lot just west of this location, striking a parked vehicle, then running through a chain-link fence. The vehicle continued east through the parking lot of the Citgo, which is located at 1522 North Liberty Street, and crossed North Liberty Street heading east, where it struck a utility guide wire and metal post as it entered the parking lot south of Gilmore's funeral home. Mr. Platter then steered his vehicle towards Officer Ayers, who was on foot and responding to assist Officer Ferguson based on the radio call of Officer Ferguson. Mr. Platter's vehicle was then fired on again by Officer Ayers as he was attempting to get out of the path of the vehicle, which was heading towards him at a high rate of speed. The vehicle then veered away from Officer Ayers and continued forward until it collided with the south side of the building located at 1609 North Liberty Street, which is Gilmore's funeral home. Warrants for arrest were obtained charging James Edward Platter III with assault with a deadly weapon on a government official for his actions of driving his vehicle towards and striking Officer Ferguson. He was also charged with an additional count of assault with a deadly weapon on a government official for steering his vehicle towards Officer Ayers. Mr. Platter was charged on a separate warrant for arrest while driving while license revoked, expired registration, and expired North Carolina state inspection. James Edward Platter III has an extensive criminal history which includes the following convictions: carrying a concealed weapon, which was a misdemeanor; possession of alcohol by a minor, which was a misdemeanor charge; possession of stolen goods, misdemeanor; second-degree trespass, misdemeanor; possession of marijuana, misdemeanor; possession with intent to sell and deliver marijuana, which was a felony charge; fleeing to elude arrest, a felony charge; possession of stolen goods, felony; robbery with a dangerous weapon, felony; another count of robbery with a dangerous weapon, which was a felony; possession of stolen goods, which was a felony charge; common law robbery, which was a felony; and robbery with a dangerous weapon, which was a felony. The current warrants for arrest were served on Mr. Platter in his hospital room this afternoon at 3 o'clock, and that was at Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center. At that time, he was given a bond hearing in front of Judge Camille Banks Payne. Mr. Platter's court date has been set for November the 21st, and he was given a $100,000 secured bond. Mr. Platter will remain in Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center in police custody until which time he is released from medical care. The investigation into this matter continues both by the Winston-Salem Police Department Criminal Investigations Division, the Winston-Salem Police Department Professional Standards Division, and also the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation. Mr. Platter does not have a current arrest photo available at this time for release. We'll be taking any questions that you might have.
Can you say the charges one more time? Sorry about that.
Sure. The current charges stemming from this incident were 2 charges of assault with a deadly weapon on a government official, 1 count in reference to Officer Ferguson, the other count in reference to Officer Ayers. In addition, Mr. Platter was charged with driving while license revoked. Any other questions?
Yeah, so just I want to make sure the first part. So Officer Ferguson made an initial attempt to stop, and then Mr. Platter sped off at that point, or I want to make sure I was clear on that.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And then after he sped off, then Officer Ferguson tried to stop him again. I'm trying to.
No, this all happened at the initial stop location
At E16.
at East 16th and Liberty, correct.
Okay. So when did Platter hit Ferguson?
At the location at Liberty
So
at
this is
16th
after, so in
Street.
other words, Platter sped off and then tried to hit Officer Ferguson after Ferguson had attempted to stop him?
Yeah, when Officer Ferguson attempted to stop Mr. Platter on Liberty Street there at 16th Street, Officer Ferguson exited his patrol vehicle and walked around and approached Mr. Platter's vehicle on the driver's side, giving verbal commands to Mr. Platter. Mr. Platter ignored those verbal commands, accelerated or revved the engine up and put it in reverse, and then accelerated forward, moving to go around or towards Officer Ferguson, and then striking him, and then maneuvered completely around Officer Ferguson's vehicle, and then continued the rest of his course of travel.
Okay, and then, so Ferguson started firing was it after he was hit?
Yes, at the you understand this is all simultaneously, but at the point when Mr. Platter was driving towards Officer Ferguson, and then Officer Ferguson was struck, then Officer Ferguson's vehicle was struck. During that sequence of actions is when Officer Ferguson fired at Mr. Platter.
And where was Ferguson's vehicle struck? What part?
Officer Ferguson's vehicle was struck kind of towards the rear bumper area of the vehicle. And when I say struck, it was more like an angle or a side swipe as Mr. Platter was trying to, when Mr. Platter accelerated towards Officer Ferguson and was attempting to get around Officer Ferguson and his patrol vehicle.
Oh, okay, okay.
I think I misunderstood you, but did you say that Officer Ferguson was hit in the knee? He was hit by the car in the knee?
Yes, he was.
Okay. And then he was hit by the car and then he fired. Or he saw the car back. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure.
As the car was traveling towards Officer Ferguson, then, and again, it all happened real simultaneously. The vehicle was traveling towards Officer Ferguson. Then, he's out with his weapon, and he's fearing the vehicle is going to strike him at that point. So that's when he discharges his weapon. Then simultaneously, the vehicle strikes Officer Ferguson, and then then strikes the vehicle, and then continues on around the patrol vehicle, and then that's when it continues around the business, and then back around Cross Liberty, and ends up at Gilmore's funeral home.
Can you talk a little bit more about the second officer's involvement?
Sure. Officer Ayers was actually on an unrelated incident down in the area of Cleveland Avenue, and he heard the radio traffic from Officer Ferguson, understanding that shots had been fired and that some altercation was taking place just above him on Liberty and 16th Street.
So he caught wind of this as Officer Ferguson fired shots at the car, at the vehicle?
Yes, ma'am. He heard the radio traffic, and he was in kind of the immediate proximity, if you will, and realizing that he was in the immediate proximity, then he started up on foot from the area of Cleveland Avenue homes up towards the area of 16th and Liberty Street. And as he was walking in that general direction, approaching Liberty, then he sees a vehicle coming east across Liberty Street directly towards him, at which point he also discharged his service weapon at the vehicle, which caused the vehicle to then veer off to the left, ultimately striking the side of Gilmore's funeral home.
Do we know whose shots hit who?
No, ma'am, not at this point.
Okay.
The car, was that registered? My understanding is that car wasn't registered to Mr. Platter.
No, sir, it was not.
So when he pulled up the record, it was of the owner?
It was not registered to Mr. Platter,
No.
and I don't have the registered information in front of me at this time, but it was not registered to Mr. Platter or Mr. Ruth, who was the passenger.
What's the protocol in a situation like this when there is a passenger in the car? So they're not the one in control of the vehicle, but they are subsequently shot. And how careful does an officer have to be firing a weapon at somebody who isn't in control of the vehicle, who might not have any choice as to where the car's heading?
Well, obviously, again, most of these situations occur very rapidly, and, obviously the officer, realizes where the passenger position would be and where the driver position would be, but ultimately, we're trying to stop the threat, and the threat in this case was automobile, heading towards him, which subsequently struck him and his patrol vehicle.
So again, the initial reason for the pullover was the officer saw the expired tag on his license plate, or expired registration on his license plate. He saw that it was past due.
The officer was aware that the vehicle was in violation of the Chapter 20 motor vehicle laws, which did encompass the registration and the state inspection.
Okay, and he noticed that by himself, or he was told, hey, this car the registration is expired. When you say he was aware, you mean he noticed that?
Yes, he noticed that. He had also had some conversation with some officers earlier that had been in the area about this particular vehicle, but yes, he was aware of that information himself.
Okay, and before he pulled over Mr. Platter, did he know that was Mr. Platter?
Yes, he knew that was Mr. Platter driving the vehicle. Yes, ma'am.
So
So in
is
other
it safe to
words-
say that he was looking for Mr. Platter to charge him with this failed registration, expired registration?
No, ma'am. The officers were in the area on patrol, and this vehicle earlier on had drew some attention from the officers, and subsequently the officers were just monitoring this vehicle due to it having been in the area earlier, and this is an area that we focus frequently on in reference to drug concerns, prostitution concerns, and so again, they were just on generalized patrol earlier, and this vehicle caught the attention of some other officers, and these other officers had some conversation with Officer Ferguson, and they were more or less just doing their police work and, you know, following up on this vehicle, and so that's kind of where we.
So
So
when
when
you
you
say
say
that-
it caught the eye of other officers, what, I mean, how so? Was it a suspicion, were they acting suspiciously, driving erratically, what was the?
I think she's already answered the question. There's no need for us to try to second guess or assume what the officers were doing at this point. She's already answered that particular question.
Well, the specific
What was
question
the-
would
can
be,
you
what
reiterate
exactly
it?
about the vehicle drew those officers who later talked to Ferguson? What exactly about the vehicle or what it was doing that drew the officers' attention and subjected that car to monitoring throughout the day? That would be the question.
Again, like I said, the officers, focus on various areas, and this is one of the areas that, you know, patrolling, as far as, you know, we enforce drug violations, prostitution violations,
So was there a specific suspicion that
Of drug-
people in this vehicle were engaging in some kind of drug activity?
we can't say that, again, this vehicle, obviously, you know, this is late at night, this vehicle was approached by some other individuals on the street. Don't know what that approach was about, but that approach was enough to direct this officer's attention to the vehicle, which again is not uncommon in this area of the city, or other areas of the city. And then based on that, the officer started checking into the vehicle and observed the Chapter 20 motor vehicle violations and elected to conduct a stop on the vehicle based on those violations and just try to determine,
Was that
you know,
something
what
that-
the vehicle was doing in the area, kind of what was going on with the occupants of the vehicle, which is just common routine police practice. And
So are you saying that the officers who later told Ferguson did that, or did Ferguson do that?
Ferguson was present when a group of officers, again, this vehicle caught their attention. They noticed some pedestrians approach the vehicle, have some type of conversation. Couldn't really determine what went on from that.
Okay. And that caused the officers to conduct some kind of check on the registration of that car
Sure.
at that time?
Sure.
So did Ferguson do that, or did the other officers do that?
Ferguson actually conducted those checks himself.
Oh, okay. And then that was the basis for him stopping the vehicle?
Correct, yes, sir.
Okay.
Now, nothing was found, no drug paraphernalia was found in
No,
the
ma'am.
vehicle? Okay,
No.
and, or on either one of the driver or the passenger?
No, ma'am.
No drugs found on them?
No.
Okay. From here on out, you may have said this when I was out of the room, but where's the investigation stand, the FBI investigation stand for both officers involved?
I can't comment on the investigation from the standpoint of the State Bureau of Investigation. Would obviously refer you to that agency.
So that's still ongoing?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you have any time frame for that? Do you know how long this
No, ma'am,
typically
I
lasts?
don't. Again, I can't speak for them.
I obviously talked to the passenger of that car, and he set forth a very different version of events as to what happened. Do you have any comment on what he has said and what he says happened?
I can just tell you that the account Mr. Rude provided to us recently after the incident occurred differs from the accounts that he has discussed with the media.
In what way?
I'm not gonna
Different.
elaborate on that. I'll just say there are inconsistencies.
Do we know what each person suffered, how many gunshot wounds each victim suffered?
Multiple.
Both suffered multiple gunshot wounds?
No, just one individual,
Just the driver?
just the driver, correct.
And then, what about Ruth?
Mr. Rude suffered one gunshot wound. Yes,
Do
ma'am.
we know where, I know he was released from the hospital.
I'm not gonna release the specifics on that.
Do you know have you been able to determine how many shots were fired?
No, sir, not at this point.
Will Ruth be charged with anything?
At this point, again, our investigation is ongoing, but not at this point in time.
Okay. And just to clarify the situation where the officers noticed Plater's car earlier, just in layman's terms, so that way, when I'm explaining this to people, I say it crystal clear. So officers noticed Plater's car earlier, they saw him pull over, some other people came up to the car, Ferguson also witnessed this. Officers had some sort of conversation like, hey, maybe later in the day, check this guy out, see what's going on, if you notice the car. Police work, like you were saying. And then Ferguson, in his police duties, took it upon himself to look at the registration, look at the tag, and noticed, okay, this is expired, now I'm gonna pull him over and see what's going on.
Correct.
Okay. I just wanna make sure that I understood that perfectly. Okay.
Can I ask also too, you said that, Platter had an extensive criminal background before this transpired. Was there anything out, was there a warrant out for him, or was there any search for him? He had,
No, ma'am. He did not currently have any outstanding warrants for him, and what I provided earlier was kind of a dissertation of his past criminal
right,
activity.
pretty lengthy.
And
And the passenger as well, do we know what his background?
Since he has not been charged with anything, and
Okay.
he's not really our material focus of the investigation, other than a witness, and he was obviously a passenger in the vehicle, I'm not gonna go into that.
Would you say he's a credible, I mean, when you say that his story's kind of changed, are you using him as a witness in this? Does his,
I can just tell you that we interview anyone and everyone on the scene of an incident, and obviously document the account that they provide us.
Right.
What happens after that fact, we have no control over.
are both officers still on leave until this SBI wraps up their investigation?
Yes, both officers are presently still on administrative duty,
Okay.
not leave. They are on administrative duty. And again, I want to make it clear, these officers have never been suspended, even though some of your reporting indicated that they have been suspended. They are on administrative duty, as is normal protocol.
are they still out in the field? Are they doing,
They're on administrative duty.
okay.
Thank you.
Even though Ferguson was injured in this incident, did he have to take any time off, or is he okay?
He has not presently taken any time off at this point related to this incident.
Okay.
Are there going to be any charges against Mr. Ruth? Are there any expected charges against Mr. Ruth?
I think I
She does answer that.
answered that earlier. Again, like I said, not at this point in time, but our investigation does continue.
And just my last thing, this, I guess, altercation between Ferguson and Plater, how long did that go on for Ayers to be able to get from Cleveland over to where he was?
I don't have an exact timeline. I can just tell you everything happened very rapidly.
Okay, and did Ayers, did he run over, did he drive over, how did he get there? Because there was conflicting reports about that.
Officer Ayers was, again, in the area of Cleveland Homes on an unrelated activity, and upon hearing the radio traffic of Officer Ferguson on foot, he started walking up towards Liberty and 16th Street. So that's how he arrived at that location.
Out of curiosity, Platter's facing some serious charges. Do you know what the jail time on something like that would be? Would it go to
I do not, and it's,
potential?
no, and as Chief Roundtree said, any questions about prosecution will have to be referred to the District Attorney's Office.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming out today. At this time, we'll end this conference. Thank you.